Every type of Street Fighter. The cheap shotter. The cheap shotter is the dirtiest kind of Street Fighter. They strike when you're distracted, turned away, or least expecting it. They don't want to fight, they want an ambush. Cheap shots usually come from a mix of anger, fear, and cowardice, and they're all about ending things before they even start. This can be a punch to the back of the head, a groin kick, or a sudden attack with a bottle or blade. The damage? Way worse than in a normal fight. When you're not braced, injuries hit harder. Concussions, knockouts, even permanent trauma. Cheap shotters rely on surprise, not skill. They weaponize your lack of awareness. And in the street, that makes them one of the most dangerous and pathetic types you'll face. I See Red. The I See Red fighter is driven entirely by emotion, not training. Fueled by adrenaline, they explode with uncontrolled aggression, charging in, throwing haymakers, ignoring defense, and losing all tactical awareness. While that raw intensity can be dangerous in the first few seconds, it's unsustainable. They tire quickly, swing inaccurately, and lack any sense of timing or balance. Physiologically, their heart rate spikes, fine motor skills drop, and tunnel vision sets in, making them vulnerable to anyone who stays calm. These fighters don't process risk, they react, and that makes them unpredictable, not unbeatable. In almost every case, composure and strategy will outlast rage. In a fight, it's not about who's angriest, it's about who's thinking. The loudmouth. The loudmouth is a psychological aggressor. Rather than initiating violence, they attempt to provoke it through verbal threats, shouting, and exaggerated gestures. This behavior is rooted in dominance display, a social tactic to intimidate without immediate risk. Functionally, the loudmouth tries to control the interaction by escalating tension. If you react emotionally, they gain the upper hand, even without throwing a punch. Risks include attracting a crowd, creating unpredictable social dynamics, or concealing a sudden attack behind theatrics. The typical profile of a loudmouth is untrained, insecure, relies on bluff and noise over actual skill, and usually they are not able to back up whatever nonsense is coming out of their mouth. The martial artist. The martial artist is usually the last person to start a street fight. With formal training often comes discipline, restraint, and respect. They know their capabilities, and that knowledge alone is often enough to avoid unnecessary conflict. From boxing to taekwondo, these individuals are conditioned, composed, and confident under pressure. But that same confidence can become a blind spot. Relying solely on one's skill can create a false sense of control in chaotic situations. The street doesn't play by gym rules. There are no referees, mats, or one-on-one guarantees. Most martial artists can defend themselves effectively, especially against untrained attackers. But danger rises when overconfidence leads them to engage instead of walk away. In street fights, it's not just skill that matters. It's context, awareness, and restraint. Training is a powerful tool, but humility is the real defense. The sprinter. The runner is often the smartest fighter in the room because they don't fight at all. This type prioritizes escape over ego and avoidance over dominance. Whether motivated by fear, legal awareness, or survival instinct, the runner understands that no street fight is worth the risk of injury, arrest, or escalation. They'll retreat early, use distance or physical barriers, and might shout or draw attention. All tactics rooted in self-preservation. Far from cowardice, this shows control, awareness, and discipline. In fact, the ability to walk away under pressure often takes more strength than swinging a fist. The downside? Some runners may later return with backup or a weapon, but most just want the situation to end. The key takeaway is simple. Escaping a fight doesn't mean losing. It means surviving. In a street fight, the person who avoids violence entirely is almost always the real winner. The guy with friends. This is the type of fighter who only acts tough when surrounded. They rely on numbers, not skill, using group presence to intimidate and control the situation. You'll often see them puffed up, gesturing, shouting, daring you to make the first move. But it's not confidence, it's a performance for their friends. Individually, they're rarely dangerous, but collectively, they're unpredictable. Fights like this can spiral fast. One person swings, and suddenly 4 more are involved. Coordination breaks down, and that's when serious injuries happen. Someone gets stomped, blindsided, or worse. The group fighter isn't about honor or skill. They're about dominance through numbers. In these situations, trying to prove yourself is a mistake. You're not fighting one guy. You're fighting his ego and his entourage. And in the street, that's a losing game. The dirty fighter. The dirty fighter doesn't care about fairness, technique, or reputation, only about doing damage. This is the person who bites, gouges eyes, rakes the face, kicks the groin, or grabs anything nearby to use as a weapon. In their mind, a street fight is a zero-sum game, and rules don't exist. What makes them dangerous isn't just their unpredictability, it's their intent. Dirty fighters don't stop when you're down. they escalate. And because their tactics are fueled by panic, rage, or desperation, things like permanent injury or infection from bites and scratches become real risks. But dirty doesn't mean skilled. They often rely on shock value. Once that fails, they gas out or lose control under resistance. Their biggest weapon is surprise, not endurance. The takeaway? If someone's willing to fight dirty, it's not a match. It's a survival scenario. Forget pride, defend your vital areas, and disengage fast. The lawyer. This type of person responds to conflict with legal awareness rather than aggression. They typically avoid physical confrontation and instead rely on verbal warnings, visible recording devices, and references to law or liability. Their goal is deterrence, to make the other party think twice by introducing the risk of legal consequences. The strength of this approach lies in psychological control. Most street fights are emotionally driven, and the sudden shift toward legal framing, being filmed, being named, or being reported can defuse aggression. It works especially well in public spaces where bystanders or cameras are present. However, there are real limitations. The lawyer type often assumes that others will also value rules or restraint, which isn't always the case. If violence escalates suddenly, this person may be physically unprepared. There's also the risk of post-conflict manipulation, where recordings get edited, accusations are twisted, or lawsuits follow regardless of fault. Understanding legal outcomes is useful, but relying solely on legality without preparedness leaves gaps in personal safety. A well-rounded street-smart mindset includes both legal awareness and physical readiness. The drunk. The drunk fighter is one of the most unpredictable threats in a street scenario. Intoxication impairs motor control, spatial awareness, and judgment, yet often boosts aggression and emotional volatility. You'll see erratic behavior, sudden shouting, swaying movements, and wild, inaccurate swings. Despite their clumsiness, drunks can be deceptively dangerous. Alcohol dulls pain receptors, so even solid strikes might not register or stop them immediately. That false sense of invincibility can escalate situations fast, especially if others get involved. Their unpredictability is their greatest weapon. You don't know if they'll throw a punch, start crying, or pull a bottle. Legally engaging with an intoxicated person carries major risk. Injuring someone visibly impaired, even if they instigated, can result in charges or public backlash. Their lack of control doesn't make you less liable. In short, drunk fighters are not strategic threats, but they are volatile liabilities. When possible, de-escalate, keep space, and let them trip over their own imbalance. The spectator. Spectators are often underestimated in a street fight, but they can be one of the most destabilizing factors. While they're not directly involved in the violence, their presence changes the psychological and tactical landscape. Most fights escalate in public, and the crowd adds pressure, distortion, and unpredictability. Spectators influence outcomes in several ways. They may cheer, heckle, film the incident, or encourage participants to keep fighting when they otherwise might have stopped. Their behavior can push individuals to act more aggressively out of pride, fear of humiliation, or social pressure. In some cases, a spectator may even step in and become a participant, turning a one-on-one into a group altercation. From a risk standpoint, they create problems. They can block your escape route, interfere with your awareness of threats, and capture footage that's edited or misinterpreted later in court. Spectators don't prioritize truth, they amplify spectacle. In real-world self-defense, understanding the crowd dynamic is critical. The more people watching, the less control you have. Smart fighters don't just monitor their opponent, they constantly track the environment. Ranking every martial art from worst to best to use in a street fight. The I see red mentality. I see red refers to a psychological state where a person becomes overwhelmed by adrenaline, usually triggered by fear, rage, or sudden stress. This isn't a martial art, it's an instinctual survival response rooted in our fight or flight system. In high-stress scenarios, the body dumps adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream, priming you for action but impairing fine motor control and decision-making. While adrenaline can temporarily increase strength and reaction time, it comes at a cost. Cognitive processing slows and tunnel vision sets in. People often lose situational awareness, ignore basic defense, and rely on wild, untrained flailing. This makes them vulnerable to more composed or skilled opponents. The concept of fighting on instinct is appealing, but it's unreliable. Without technique, aggression turns into inefficiency, punches become sloppy, balance is lost, and energy is burned rapidly. The adrenaline dump that follows can lead to extreme fatigue, disorientation, and inability to continue defending yourself. In terms of real-world application, relying on pure emotion instead of trained technique is a high-risk approach. It may work against untrained, passive opponents, but against anyone with basic skill or composure, it fails quickly. Effective self-defense requires clarity under pressure, not blind rage. The takeaway is simple. Aggression is not a substitute for preparation. Mindset matters, but without mechanics, it's not not a fighting strategy, it's a liability. The gym bro. The gym bro mindset evolved throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, fueled by the rise of bodybuilding culture, Hollywood action stars, and later, social media fitness influencers. It's the belief that visible muscle mass, big arms, big chest, a shredded six-pack, translates directly into real-world fighting ability. But that belief is fundamentally flawed. Muscles without technique don't win fights. In fact, they often get in the way. Most gym bros lack footwork. Their stances are wide, flat, and unstable. They don't know how to control distance, so they overextend with wild punches that leave them off balance. Their strikes are often telegraphed and stiff, driven by brute force rather than proper mechanics. Under stress, this gets worse. The adrenaline spike in a real fight burns through energy fast, and without cardio adapted to combat, the kind built through pad work, sparring, and drills, many gym bros gas out within seconds. Muscle mass also demands more oxygen, and when panic sets in, their endurance crashes. There's also no ability to take or deliver hits correctly. Untrained fighters often punch incorrectly, risking hand injuries, and they don't know how to protect themselves when getting hit. Defensive posture collapses, and without knowledge of clinch, grappling, or escape techniques, raw strength becomes a limited tool. Size can intimidate, but it creates a dangerous illusion of power. Fighting requires skill, timing, positioning, and composure. A smaller trained fighter will almost always outclass a bigger untrained one. The gym builds muscle, not mindset or mechanics. Kung Fu. Kung Fu is an umbrella term for hundreds of traditional Chinese martial arts developed over thousands of years, often tied to Shaolin monks, Taoist philosophy, and dynastic warfare. Systems like Hung Gar, Choi Li Fut, and Northern Praying Mantis were designed for battlefield or ceremonial use, not for street-level violence. Much of modern Kung Fu is preserved for cultural heritage, not combat readiness. The problem is training methodology. Most Kung Fu styles revolve around forms, long choreographed sequences called kata or taolu. These are practiced solo with no opponent in ideal stances under ideal timing. They teach movement patterns, not real-time decision-making. There's usually no sparring, no resistance, and very little contact. That means no pressure testing, which is what builds real fighting skill. The techniques themselves often rely on outdated ideas, deep stances that limit mobility, animal-inspired movements that don't match human biomechanics, and flashy strikes that don't account for modern threats like tackles, clinches, or dirty boxing. These methods might look elegant, but they don't reflect the chaos of real violence. Kung Fu has immense historical and cultural value, but it's not structured to handle unpredictable, high-speed, full-contact encounters. Without resistance training, its practitioners lack timing, adaptability, and impact conditioning. It's not useless, but it's been preserved more as performance and tradition than as a functional self-defense system. In a street fight, choreography won't save you. Reaction, realism, and repetition will. Aikido. Aikido was developed in Japan in the early 20th century by Morihei Ueshiba, blending elements of jujutsu and swordsmanship with a spiritual philosophy of harmony. Its goal was not to defeat an opponent, but to neutralize violence without harm. The techniques center on joint locks, wrist manipulations, and redirecting an attacker's momentum using circular movement. The problem is that Aikido was never designed for full contact fighting. Its training assumes that the attacker will grab your wrist or throw a slow, committed punch, giving you time and structure to execute a throw or lock. That's simply not how real violence plays out. Attacks on the street are fast, chaotic, and unpredictable. Nobody throws compliant strikes or holds position while you apply a technique. More critically, Aikido lacks sparring. Without full resistance, students never learn to deal with pressure, adrenaline, or non-cooperative opponents. They train in ideal conditions that fall apart the moment real force is applied. When a technique fails, which it often does under resistance, there's no striking, clinching, or fallback plan to recover. Aikido might develop balance, posture, and flow, but without pressure testing, those traits don't translate to real-world effectiveness. Beautiful movement doesn't equal functional self-defense. In a live fight, compliance is rare, and Aikido depends on it. Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu evolved from traditional judo after it was introduced to Brazil in the early 20th century. The Gracie family modified it, focusing less on throws and more on ground grappling, emphasizing leverage, joint locks, and chokes to allow smaller individuals to control or submit larger opponents. BJJ became globally recognized after early UFC events, where it consistently dominated untrained fighters. In terms of control and technique, BJJ is incredibly effective. It teaches body mechanics, balance, pressure, and patience, and gives practitioners real experience through live sparring. But when it comes to self-defense in a chaotic street environment, BJJ has clear limitations. The biggest issue is that it brings the fight to the ground, which is exactly where you don't want to be if weapons or multiple attackers are involved. Pulling guard or sitting to your back might work in sport, but on concrete or asphalt, it's dangerous. There's no awareness of your surroundings when you're tangled in someone's legs and your head is inches from pavement. BJJ also lacks striking. If you can't defend against punches or elbows, your technique may break down before you get control. And while sport BJJ builds great habits for competition, it also introduces bad ones, like butt scooting, playing for points, or ignoring posture while setting up a sweep. As a base, jiu-jitsu is excellent, but on its own, without situational awareness, striking ability, or stand-up control, it's not enough for the street. You'll survive, but it won't always be pretty. Wrestling. Wrestling is one of the oldest combat systems on the planet, with roots going back thousands of years to ancient Mesopotamia, Greece, and Egypt. It's been a foundational part of military training, Olympic sport, and mixed martial arts. Modern wrestling, whether freestyle or Greco-Roman, is all about takedowns, control, and dominating the clinch. It builds incredible balance, explosive power, and positional awareness. As a one-on-one grappling base, wrestling is elite. Wrestlers learn how to control where the fight happens, standing or on the ground, and they're conditioned to push through exhaustion, pain, and pressure. Their ability to dictate range and neutralize opponents makes them dominant in a controlled fight. But in a street fight, the same strengths can become vulnerabilities. Wrestling teaches you to close the distance and take someone down, which is the last place you want to be if you're dealing with concrete, hidden weapons, or multiple attackers. The ground isn't padded, and while you're busy pinning one guy, his friend might be kicking you in the head. Wrestling also lacks strikes. There's no punching, no kicking, and no training for how to defend against someone throwing haymakers. That means you could take someone down, but still get cut, choked, or knocked out in the process. Wrestling is a survival tool. It gives you control, endurance, and the ability to end fights quickly, but it needs to be paired with situational awareness and striking skills. On its own, it's powerful, but incomplete for the chaos of the street. Sambo. Sambo originated in the Soviet Union in the 1920s as a hybrid combat system for military and law enforcement. Its creators combined the best of judo, traditional Russian wrestling, and other global grappling styles. There are two main branches: Sport Sambo, which looks a lot like judo but with more leg locks, and Combat Sambo, which includes striking and is used by Russian special forces. As a grappling art, Sambo is solid. It teaches explosive throws, submissions, positional control, and transitional awareness, all useful in self-defense. Combat Sambo adds punches, kicks, and defensive tactics, making it more well-rounded than pure grappling systems. Its emphasis on rugged conditioning and aggression gives practitioners a mental edge in high-stress scenarios. But the problem isn't the system, it's the application. Most Sambo outside of Russia is sport-focused, not combat-ready. And just like with jiu-jitsu or wrestling, the emphasis is still on taking the fight to the ground, which isn't always ideal in a real-world scenario. You don't want to be tied up in a leg lock while someone's friend stomps on your spine. Also, Combat Sambo training, the version that includes strikes and street-relevant techniques, is rare in the West. So most practitioners aren't drilling against weapons, aren't training under chaotic conditions, and aren't preparing for environmental hazards like pavement or glass. Sambo gives you strong fundamentals in control and submissions, but without striking, awareness, or a way to deal with multiple attackers, it's another powerful but limited tool in the street. Muay Thai. Muay Thai, also known as the art of 8 limbs, originated in Thailand with deep military roots. It was developed not just as a sport, but as a battlefield method of close-quarters combat. Over centuries, it evolved into a devastating striking system using punches, kicks, knees, elbows, and clinch work, turning the human body into a weapon from all angles. What makes Muay Thai brutally effective in the street is its simplicity and realism. Fighters train with full contact, live sparring, and heavy conditioning. They're used to pain, chaos, and the pressure of real-time violence. There's no fantasy in Muay Thai. Everything is drilled to work under fire. Elbows cut, knees break posture, low kicks destroy balance. And the clinch isn't just a hold, it's a weaponized position used to control and punish. Muay Thai doesn't assume ideal conditions. It adapts. If someone rushes you, you frame, clinch, and counter with short-range strikes that end the fight before it escalates. There's no wasted motion, just damage. And unlike styles that rely on perfect technique or unrealistic distance, Muay Thai thrives in dirty, close-up brawls. The only real drawback is that, like boxing, it doesn't include grappling or groundwork. But with its balance of power, endurance, and reaction training, Muay Thai prepares you for the violence most people aren't ready for. It's not just striking, it's striking evolved for survival. Boxing. Boxing is one of the oldest and most refined striking arts in the world. It focuses on punches, head movement, footwork, and timing. But what makes it so effective isn't just the techniques, it's the way it's trained. Boxers don't just hit pads, they spar a lot. That means they're constantly reacting to pressure, getting hit, adapting in real time, and learning how to stay calm in chaos. In a street fight, that makes a massive difference. The ability to move your feet, slip punches, and land accurate strikes under stress is invaluable. Most street altercations happen in close quarters, and boxing is built for exactly that range. Yaps, crosses, hooks, uppercuts, these are fast, powerful, and often fight-ending when delivered by someone with proper training. Boxers also develop excellent distance control. They understand range, they know when to close in and when to disengage. Their conditioning is elite, and they're trained to keep their composure even after taking a shot, something most untrained people can't do. But boxing isn't perfect. It has no grappling, no clinch control beyond dirty boxing, and no groundwork. If someone tackles you or drags you to the floor, a pure boxer might be in trouble. Still, in 90% of street fights, the person who lands the first clean shot wins, and that's where boxing dominates. Pressure-tested, practical, and brutally efficient, boxing is one of the most street-ready martial arts. The sprinter. There's one martial art that always wins in the street, and it doesn't involve punches, kicks, or takedowns. It's called running. The sprinter isn't a joke category. It's the mindset that prioritizes survival over ego. The reality is this: the best street fight is the one you're not in. Street violence is chaotic, unpredictable, and legally dangerous. Even if you win the physical altercation, you might lose in court or face retaliation later. That's why situational awareness, verbal de-escalation, and the ability to walk away are the most underrated self-defense tools you'll ever have. No technique can match the value of avoiding the fight entirely. Most real confrontations aren't duels. They're ambushes, group attacks, or alcohol-fueled stupidity. Even the most trained fighter is vulnerable to a sucker punch, a hidden weapon, or a second attacker jumping in. Escaping isn't cowardice, it's control, it's intelligence, and it's survival. The sprinter wins because they live to fight another day, or better yet, never have to. Martial arts can teach discipline, fitness, and mental resilience, but the highest level of mastery is knowing when not to use them. In the end, it's not about dominance. It's about staying safe, legally clean, and physically intact. That's the real win, and the real martial art. Explaining every country's martial art. Silat. Pencak Silat, the collective term for Indonesia's diverse martial arts, is a system that merges combat, culture, and spirituality into one flowing art form. Originating from ancient warrior traditions across the Indonesian islands, it was designed for both self-defense and warfare, using a combination of strikes, sweeps, locks, and weapon techniques. The word pencak refers to the performance aspect, the graceful, dance-like movements, while Silat represents the combat itself. This dual nature makes the art both beautiful and dangerous, with each motion hiding a potential strike or takedown. Fighters are trained to move with rhythm, deception, and control, often using traditional weapons, such as sticks, knives, and the kris dagger. Training begins with respect rituals and meditation, reinforcing discipline, humility, and awareness of one's surroundings. Melayu. Silat Melayu, also simply called Silat, originated in the Malay archipelago and is one of Southeast Asia's oldest living martial traditions. It developed as a system of both armed and unarmed combat, designed for survival in jungles, villages, and royal courts. Its movements are fluid and deceptive, resembling a dance until a sudden strike or takedown reveals its purpose. Practitioners learn to use traditional weapons like the curved kris dagger, sticks, and spears, while also mastering sweeps, locks, and joint breaks for close quarters defense. Every motion is built around balance, timing, and control of rhythm, qualities deeply tied to Malay culture and spirituality. Silat training often begins with ritual bows and music played on drums and gongs, honoring teachers and ancestors. Across Malaysia and Indonesia, hundreds of regional styles exist, each shaped by geography and local warfare. Today, Silat Melayu endures not only as a practical martial art, but as a proud expression of cultural identity, philosophy, and respect for heritage. Lethwei. Lethwei, known as the Art of Nine Limbs, is Myanmar's ancient and brutally honest form of combat. Unlike Muay Thai, which uses 8 points of contact, Lethwei adds a 9th weapon, the headbutt. This small addition transforms every exchange into something far more unpredictable and dangerous. The art dates back centuries to Burmese warriors who trained for survival on real battlefields. Modern Lethwei fights are bare-knuckled, with no gloves, minimal rules, and almost no protective gear. Knockouts are the preferred, and often the only, way to win. Fighters are conditioned to absorb punishment and fight through pain, showing resilience above all else. In Lethwei culture, courage matters more than victory. Quitting is considered a deeper loss than being knocked out. Today, this raw and uncompromising style has earned international respect for its sheer toughness, standing as one of the most intense and fearless striking arts in the world. MMA. Mixed martial arts, often called MMA, began in the United States in the early 1990s as an experiment to discover which martial art was truly the most effective. It brought together boxers, wrestlers, judo players, and jiu-jitsu masters into one arena under the banner of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, or UFC. Early matches had almost no rules, no gloves, and no weight classes. It was pure, unfiltered combat. What emerged from those brutal early days was a new system that rewarded versatility and adaptation. Fighters soon learned that specializing in one style wasn't enough. They needed to punch like a boxer, kick like a Muay Thai fighter, wrestle like an Olympian, and submit opponents like a jiu-jitsu black belt. Over time, MMA developed a refined rule set to ensure safety, while keeping the full contact realism that defined it. Today, it's not just a sport, but a global phenomenon, representing the evolution of all martial arts into one, a blend of technique, endurance, and mental toughness that defines modern combat. Save, also known as French kickboxing, was born on the rough streets of 19th century Paris. In a time when sailors, thieves, and soldiers fought bare-knuckled in the alleys, fighters began to refine their street brawls into something more graceful and controlled. The result was savate, a martial art that blends elegance with effectiveness. Practitioners, called saboteurs, wear specially designed shoes and strike with the foot instead of the shin, delivering precise kicks that rely on accuracy rather than brute strength. The art combines Western boxing punches with agile legwork and smooth foot movement, turning combat into something almost choreographed. Training focuses on timing, balance, and control of distance, teaching fighters to move with rhythm and economy. Over time, savate evolved from self-defense to sport, becoming one of Europe's most technically sophisticated striking systems. Today, it's practiced around the world, admired for its style, precision, and the way it transforms street fighting into an art of grace and discipline. Krav Maga. Krav Maga is a modern self-defense system created in Israel during the mid-20th century, developed specifically for the Israeli military. Unlike traditional martial arts that evolved through ceremony or sport, Krav Maga was built purely for survival. It combines the most effective techniques from boxing, wrestling, judo, and aikido, stripped of anything unnecessary. Every movement serves one purpose: to end a threat as quickly as possible. Practitioners are trained to react instinctively under extreme pressure, using eye strikes, groin kicks, and weapon disarms to survive attacks involving knives, guns, or multiple opponents. There are no rituals, no competitions, and no points to score because, in real life, there are no referees. Training also emphasizes situational awareness, understanding surroundings, reading intent, and acting before danger escalates. The mindset is as important as the technique. Stay alert, stay aggressive, and stay alive. Krav Maga isn't about fighting for honor or victory. It's about making sure you walk away. BJJ. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, often called BJJ, was born in Brazil in the early 20th century when the Gracie family adapted techniques from traditional Japanese judo and jiu-jitsu. What began as a form of self-defense soon became a revolution in the martial arts world. The philosophy behind BJJ is simple but powerful. Technique beats strength. It focuses almost entirely on ground fighting, where practitioners use pins, joint locks, and chokeholds to control and submit opponents. By emphasizing leverage, timing, and positioning, BJJ allows smaller fighters to overcome much larger ones, proving that intelligence and precision can triumph over brute force. Training is often called rolling, where students practice in live sparring sessions that build patience, adaptability, and humility. The goal isn't destruction, it's control. Over time, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu became a cornerstone of modern mixed martial arts, shaping how the world views combat effectiveness and redefining what it means to win through technique rather than power. Sambo. Sambo, short for self-defense without weapons, was developed in the Soviet Union in the 1920s as part of a government effort to create the most effective hand-to-hand combat system for soldiers and law enforcement. It blended judo, wrestling, and traditional Russian grappling styles, focusing on practicality and speed rather than formality. Sambo fighters, called sambis, train in distinctive red or blue jackets and shorts, emphasizing explosive throws, leg locks, and ground control. The art's goal is simple: to end a confrontation quickly and decisively. In its early days, Sambo was strictly military, but it later evolved into a competitive sport, showcasing precision and athleticism. Unlike many martial arts that rely on ritual or hierarchy, Sambo's philosophy is built on adaptability and efficiency. Its techniques are designed to neutralize opponents of any size using leverage and momentum. Over the decades, Sambo's effectiveness caught the attention of MMA fighters worldwide, who adopted its throws and submissions as key weapons in modern combat sports. Kalaripayattu. Kalaripayattu, often called the mother of all martial arts, originated thousands of years ago in Kerala, southern India. It was developed for battlefield warfare and royal defense, combining physical mastery with spiritual discipline. The word itself means training ground for battle. Kalaripayattu includes strikes, kicks, locks, and weapon combat using swords, staffs, and daggers. Training begins with stretching, balance, and fluid footwork before moving to weapons and empty-hand fighting. Students are taught to channel energy through the body, maintaining focus, respect, and harmony, values drawn from Hindu philosophy. Masters are treated with deep reverence, as teaching is considered a sacred exchange. Beyond combat, the art also integrates healing practices and the study of body points, connecting martial skill with medicine. Over the centuries, Kalaripayattu influenced Indian dance, yoga, and even modern film choreography. It remains a symbol of India's ancient warrior culture, a blend of combat, meditation, and art in perfect balance. Pankration. Pankration was the ancient Greek answer to the question of ultimate combat, a brutal mix of boxing and wrestling that allowed nearly anything to win. First introduced in the Olympic Games of 648 BCE, its name translates to all powers, a perfect reflection of its no-limits philosophy. Competitors used punches, kicks, throws, and joint locks, fighting until one could no longer continue. Only two acts were forbidden: eye gouging and biting. Everything else was fair game. Pankration wasn't just a sport, it was a test of total mastery, physical, mental, and spiritual. The Greeks believed that a true warrior had to combine strength with strategy and control, embodying discipline as much as aggression. Though the practice faded after the fall of ancient Greece, its spirit survived, inspiring modern mixed martial arts and combat systems around the world. Today, Pankration stands as the ancestor of full contact fighting, the original fusion of technique, endurance, and human will. Taekwondo. Taekwondo, meaning the way of the foot and fist, was born in post-war Korea as the nation sought to rebuild its identity through discipline and strength. It combined elements of older Korean fighting systems with techniques from Japanese karate, evolving into a martial art that emphasized high, fast, and acrobatic kicks. The art is defined by its spectacular spinning and jumping strikes, showcasing both athleticism and precision. But beneath the flashy movements lies a deep philosophy centered on respect, perseverance, and self-control. Students progress through a colored belt system, each representing a stage of growth from beginner to master, both physically and mentally. Taekwondo training is rigorous, focusing on flexibility, power, and balance, but also on developing character and humility. When it became an official Olympic sport in 2000, Taekwondo transformed into a symbol of Korean culture and pride, uniting millions around the world under the shared spirit of discipline and determination. Mongol wrestling. Mongol wrestling, also called buk, the national sport of Mongolia, is more than just wrestling. It's a living link to the age of Genghis Khan. The great Mongol armies once used buk to train their soldiers, believing that strong wrestlers made fearless warriors. The rules are simple but demanding. Make your opponent touch the ground with any part of the body except the feet. There are no weight classes, no time limits. Only strength, technique, and endurance decide the outcome. Wrestlers wear traditional open-chested jackets, shorts, and boots, each piece symbolizing honor and heritage. Before every match, they perform the eagle dance, spreading their arms like wings to represent power and freedom. Victory is earned not through violence, but through balance, patience, and control. Buk has been practiced for centuries, passed down through generations as both sport and ceremony. Today, it remains a proud expression of Mongolian identity, a celebration of discipline, respect, and the enduring spirit of the steppe warriors. Kung Fu. Kung Fu, also known as Wushu, is one of the oldest and most diverse martial arts traditions in the world. Originating in ancient China thousands of years ago, the term Kung Fu doesn't refer to a single style, but to a vast collection of fighting systems developed across dynasties, temples, and regions. Each style carries its own philosophy and rhythm. Some mimic the movements of animals like the tiger, crane, or dragon, while others draw inspiration from natural elements like wind and water. More than just a method of combat, Kung Fu is a way of life, blending physical mastery with moral discipline and spiritual awareness. Rooted in Taoist and Buddhist teachings, it seeks harmony between body, mind, and energy, known as qi. Over centuries, Kung Fu evolved from battlefield practice to a refined art form, influencing Chinese opera, philosophy, and global cinema. Today, it stands as both a martial discipline and a symbol of balance, patience, and inner strength. Muay Thai. Muay Thai, known as the art of 8 limbs, limbs, is Thailand's national martial art and one of the most powerful striking systems in the world. It evolved from ancient battlefield techniques called Muay Boran, once used by soldiers when weapons were lost in combat. The 8 limbs refer to the use of fists, elbows, knees, and shins. Every part of the body turned into a weapon. Training in Muay Thai is brutally demanding, focusing on endurance, precision, and mental toughness. Fighters condition their bodies through countless rounds of heavy bag work, pad drills, and sparring, hardening their bones and spirit alike. Before every match, practitioners perform the Wai Kru Ram Muay, a traditional dance that pays respect to their teachers and heritage. In Muay Thai, courage and heart matter more than victory itself. It's both a sport and a spiritual discipline, a living expression of Thai culture, resilience, and respect. Today, its techniques dominate combat sports worldwide, celebrated for their power, simplicity, and unshakable spirit. Eskrima. Eskrima, also known as arnis or kali, is the national martial art of the Philippines and one of the most practical, weapon-based fighting systems in the world. It focuses on stick and blade combat, teaching practitioners to move with precision, rhythm, and flow. What makes Eskrima unique is its seamless transition between armed and unarmed fighting. The same techniques used with a stick can instantly be applied with a knife or bare hands. Rooted in centuries of tribal warfare and later adapted during periods of colonization, Eskrima became both a form of resistance and survival. Fighters learned to adapt quickly, using whatever weapon was available, even farming tools to defend themselves. The art emphasizes timing, awareness, and fluid movement rather than brute strength. Today, Eskrima is taught to military and police forces around the world for its efficiency in real combat. To Filipinos, it's more than just a martial art. It's a proud symbol of resilience, adaptability, and a warrior spirit that refused to be conquered. Explaining the biggest cheating scandals in combat sports. Padless gloves. In 1983, Luis Resto was involved in the most serious cheating scandal in boxing history. During his fight against Billy Collins Jr., Resto entered the ring with the padding deliberately removed from his gloves. This turned every punch into a more dangerous, damaging blow, far beyond what's legally allowed in the sport. Over the course of 10 rounds, Collins absorbed extreme damage. He suffered broken bones in his face, permanent eye injuries, and career-ending trauma. The gloves were only examined after the fight when Collins' father, also his trainer, noticed they felt unusually thin. This led to an official investigation. The result confirmed the violation. Resto's gloves had been illegally altered, and the New York State Athletic Commission ruled the incident a criminal act, not just a breach of rules. Both Resto and his trainer, Panama Lewis, were convicted of assault and conspiracy. Resto served prison time and was banned from boxing for life. Billy Collins Jr. never fought again. He lost vision in one eye and died less than a year later. His death is widely linked to the psychological and physical damage caused by the fight. It crossed the line from sportsmanship into physical assault and changed how athletic commissions inspect equipment before and after fights. Cement wraps. In 2009, Antonio Margarito was caught attempting to fight with illegal hand wraps before his bout with Shane Mosley. During the pre-fight inspection, Mosley's team noticed something unusual in Margarito's wraps. The California State Athletic Commission ordered them removed and examined. Inside, officials found inserts coated with a plaster-like substance. These inserts were designed to harden as the fight progressed, essentially turning Margarito's fists into blunt weapons. Had the wraps not been discovered, every punch thrown would have carried the force of a cast, significantly increasing the risk of serious injury to his opponent. The wraps were confiscated, Margarito was forced to rewrap his hands legally, and Mosley went on to dominate the fight, stopping Margarito in the 9th round. The scandal immediately raised questions about Margarito's previous performances. Most notably, suspicion turned toward his 2008 win over Miguel Cotto. In that fight, Cotto suffered an unusual amount of facial damage, including excessive swelling and bleeding, leading many to believe Margarito may have used the same illegal wraps. Although there was no official proof that the wraps were used in earlier fights, the damage to Margarito's reputation was irreversible. He was suspended for 1 year by the California State Athletic Commission, and public trust in his legitimacy as a fighter never fully recovered. John Jones. Jones is widely considered the most talented fighter in MMA history, but his legacy is filled with controversy. Alongside title wins and dominant performances, Jones has one of the most documented histories of cheating and rule violations in the sport. His biggest issues involve performance-enhancing drugs. Jones has failed multiple drug tests over the course of his career. In 2016, he tested positive for clomiphene and letrozole, both banned substances. In 2017, he failed another test, this time for turinabol, an anabolic steroid. These violations led to suspensions, stripped titles, and canceled fights. In addition to banned substances, Jones has a long record of rule bending inside the cage. He's known for frequent eye pokes, often using extended fingers to manage distance while risking illegal contact. He regularly targets the knees with oblique kicks, legal but widely viewed as dangerous due to the potential for serious joint injury. These fouls are rarely penalized, but they create small, consistent advantages. Jones has often remained just within the limits of what referees are willing to call, making his rule-breaking difficult to punish in real time. The debate around Jon Jones isn't just about his skill, it's about whether that skill has been consistently aided by cheating, both inside and outside the cage. His career is a clear example of how technical excellence and repeated rule violations can exist at the same time. Vitor Belfort. During the early 2010s, the UFC entered what became known as the TRT era, a period where fighters were allowed to use testosterone replacement therapy under doctors' supervision. The practice was controversial, but technically legal under Athletic Commission exemptions. Vitor Belfort became the most prominent and arguable figure of that era. While on TRT, Belfort showed a dramatic physical transformation. He appeared more muscular, more aggressive, and more explosive than at any other point in his long career. His knockout power increased, and he delivered some of the most violent finishes in UFC history during this time. One of the most discussed examples was his head kick knockout of Michael Bisping in 2013. That kick caused permanent damage to Bisping's eye, eventually requiring him to wear a prosthetic. Although Belfort never technically broke the rules while on TRT, the advantage it gave him was significant. His success during that period raised serious concerns about the use of therapeutic exemptions for performance enhancement. The UFC's decision to ban TRT was largely influenced by the controversy surrounding him. His case remains one of the clearest examples of how regulated substances can still create an uneven playing field in combat sports. Romero Stoolgate. At UFC 178, Yoel Romero faced Tim Kennedy in a high-stakes middleweight bout. The controversy began at the end of round 2, when Kennedy landed a barrage of punches that left Romero visibly stunned and close to being finished. Under normal rules, the fighter must rise from the stool and answer the bell to start the next round. But when round 3 was set to begin, Romero remained seated. His corner deliberately left the stool in the cage and covered him in excess Vaseline, a tactic that forced the officials to pause the fight. The delay lasted 28 seconds beyond the standard 1-minute break between rounds. During that time, Romero recovered. No point was deducted, no disqualification was issued, and the fight continued. Once the third round began, Romero came out fresh and quickly turned the tables, landing punches and finishing Kennedy by TKO. This incident became known as Stoolgate. The win remained on Romero's record, and the UFC never issued formal discipline. The controversy raised ongoing questions about officiating and enforcement in MMA. It also highlighted how subtle rule manipulation, in this case simply sitting for an extra half minute, can have a direct impact on the outcome of a fight. To this day, Stoolgate is considered one of the clearest examples of gamesmanship crossing into rule-breaking with no accountability. Ricardo Mayorga. Ricardo Mayorga is one of the most unorthodox and controversial boxers in modern history, known as much for his fouls as for his fists. While he held world titles in 2 weight classes, his real notoriety came from how he broke the rules, both inside and outside the ring. In the ring, Mayorga consistently used illegal tactics. Low blows were common, often landing without apology. Headbutts, rabbit punches to the back of the head, and hitting after the bell were all part of his approach. He treated rules like suggestions, and many referees struggled to control his behavior. Outside the ring, his conduct was just as chaotic. Mayorga's press conferences and weigh-ins often involved smoking cigarettes on stage, throwing insults, or physically provoking his opponents. He made a spectacle of disrespect, aiming to get into his opponent's head before the first punch was thrown. While some fans found his antics entertaining, most experts agree he represents one of the dirtiest fighters the sport has ever seen. His legacy isn't about technique or discipline. It's about pushing the limits of what a referee would allow and making chaos part of his strategy. Judge coercion. In 2003, Roy Jones Jr. competed in a highly controversial bout against Antonio Tarver. While not a traditional case of equipment tampering or drug use, the controversy centered around manipulation of judging and promotion influence, something that's often overlooked as a form of cheating. Jones, one of boxing's biggest stars at the time, was awarded a majority decision in a fight where many observers believed Tarver had clearly done enough to win. The issue wasn't just about scoring, it was about the systemic bias built into high-level boxing. Promoters, networks, and sanctioning bodies all had financial stakes in keeping Jones on top. Critics pointed to this as an example of institutionalized favoritism, where the house fighter is nearly impossible to beat on the scorecards unless he's knocked out. While no rules were technically broken, the fight fueled distrust in boxing's integrity and highlighted how judicial manipulation can impact the outcome just as much as PEDs, or illegal hand wraps. This wasn't an isolated incident. It represented a pattern where elite fighters sometimes benefit from scoring that protects the business, even if it means robbing the opponent. In many ways, this kind of cheating is harder to detect and punish, but just as damaging to the credibility of the sport. Loaded ankle wraps. In 2016, Charles Bennett, also known as Crazy Horse, was involved in an infamous moment of foul-based cheating during his fight against Minoru Kimura in Japan. Just seconds into the bout, Bennett sprinted across the ring and landed an illegal soccer kick to his downed opponent, clearly against the rules of the promotion. The move caused immediate chaos and controversy. It wasn't accidental or heat of the moment. It was blatant and calculated. Bennett had a long history of pushing the boundaries of legality in the ring, but this fight showed how some fighters weaponize the element of surprise and rule violation to shock opponents, exploit loopholes, or create confusion. While not as long-lasting as steroid use or hand-wrap tampering, this style of chaos-based cheating is dangerous because it normalizes violence outside the rulebook and sometimes gets rewarded by viral attention or crowd support. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And let me know what other similar content you would like to see down below in the comments.